there are 4 areas that we want to really focus on as an agency going forward. And those 4 areas are rebranding, the experience of the residents, we're going to call it, thank you, the resident experience, and then expansion and growth, and then the operation itself. So when we talk about rebranding, we're a housing authority, and of course, anytime you say the words housing authority to anybody, anywhere in the country, they kind of take a step back and say, we don't know if we want that here. We don't know how we feel about that. So, and one of the issues that we're dealing with is just the image of the agency, how we are perceived within the confines of the city of Aurora. We want to make sure that we're putting our best face forward, and we want to make sure that the image that we have doesn't come between us and our end goal, which is to do better for the residents that we serve. So in that, we looked at these areas. 1 being the logo, 2 being the website, the office that we've had that discussion already, so we won't spend a lot of time there. Vehicles, our professionalism as an agency, our marketing and advertising, and then educational outreach. So the first being our new logo. I am not an artist, so I apologize, there aren't very good representations of that. But our logo it's the first kind of representation of ourselves. And it's the first thing people see. When they go on the website, when they see our signs places, posted places, they know that means the Aurora Housing Authority. One of the things we have kind of dealt with or discussed internally is possibly, and we're not talking about a legal change of name here, but at least a change of how we present ourselves. One of the things that we do here is housing. That's what we do, and we do housing in Aurora. So we thought the idea of calling ourselves Housing Aurora might seem a little more modern, a little more contemporary. As far as the logo is concerned, we want it to be sleek, we want it to be modern, we want it to be simple. It doesn't have to be complex. Obviously, the color scheme is very important. We are an agency, we've kind of always associated ourselves with the green color, and there's no need to change that. I think the colors can be done in a way that kind of is also contemporary and kind of forward-thinking. One of the things I'm sure we haven't paid a lot of attention to, the tagline that a lot of times businesses use is sort of what they get known for. Everybody's got a little quick thing that goes along with their logo or goes along with their name. UPS has logistics, and different companies have these little. Progressive, I think, has a cute little thing that they use for their business. And really what we are doing is really trying to look at ourselves and promote ourselves as a business. So we want to have something that's quick, that's catchy. Again, I am no marketing wizard, so those are the 2 that we came up with in kind of a short time. But just having something that people can see on our signs that's kind of more catchy, it kind of lends itself a little more to us being seen as a business and less of an entity or a government agency. Again, I say no artist. These are some of the just ideas, things we can change the way that we appear. Obviously, we have our logo, and it kind of gives away before we get someplace who we are, what we're trying to do. Maybe people wouldn't immediately be so offended or against something that came with a different logo, came with a different presentation. The website, and this is a big one for us. Our website is actually very useful. It's a lot more useful than a lot of housing authority websites. So I'm not really saying that we don't have a good website. What I'm saying is our website needs to compete. And I think it's something that housing authorities don't do enough of. We don't spend time trying to compete because we know we have a customer base. And we know no matter what we do, there will always be the 20% of families at the lowest level of the income scale who need us. But frankly, that's not enough. I really think that as an agency, we can and should do more. There's a need at 40% of the median income. There's a need at 80% of that median income. And those are needs that we're not meeting right now. And a website is an important factor in how people come to know any real estate property management firm. Anytime I've ever gone and moved into a new city, first thing I did was search realtor.com and search Amly, see if they had property. But their websites are very intuitive, they're very user-friendly. So, what we want to have is an interactive website, a website that allows people to look at our available units, the literal available units, not just what an available unit would look like. We should have floor plans so people can determine, is this big enough for me? Is this the right kind of unit for me? What is Maple Terrace better for me than Centennial House? And by being able to see the units that are available at those locations, people will be able to make more informed decisions. And I think the more informed our customers are, the better our customers can be. We want to make sure we have lots of photos, lots of information on how to apply. We actually want the website to take applications. at least a pre-application to save both the customers and the housing authority some time, as far as having people come in, bring documentation, only to find out that they don't qualify or don't meet certain requirements of the agency. When we look at some of the top tier private market rental companies, your Amleys, your Lincolns, your Alexans, they have these very colorful, bright, active websites. There's no reason why we shouldn't and can't have the same thing. We want to keep it updated. That's important. We want to make sure that we have regularly updated information. For example, this strategic plan will go on the website and it'll sit there until we decide that it's not valid, which is for 5 years. But if we make little tweaks along the way, will we update that? Will people notice that we've made that update? Those are the kinds of things I think that are important as an agency in our position, that we put that information out to the public. So as we're having these meetings, a YouTube channel kind of is a part of that. And the next kind of highlighted areas to incorporate kind of a total web presence. And we don't have a YouTube, what we do now, have a YouTube page. We don't have Facebook, we don't use Twitter, we don't have a mobile site, we don't have apps that you can download. I have a cell phone, I have probably 200 apps on it. You download them because they're free and you might need them one day. We need to do more of these things. There's so many tools available. I mean, right now, we do these board meetings, we're using one of those tools. We we record the meetings, we post them on our website, or we post them on YouTube. That way, when people have questions, not only can they refer to the minutes, but they can refer to the video. They can get more context from that information. And utilizing a very mobile and a very web-based presence will allow for more people to become familiar with who we are, what we're doing, and the direction that we're going in. So we really want to have a really forward-thinking approach to utilizing technology in our website to incorporate a lot of functions and details.
Do you have any idea how many people look at those every month or no?
Right now, our website is very lonely. Is what I'll say. We do not get a lot of attention. For example, and not that it's always been to our detriment, but we've had some pretty heated discussions about development and about things that really previously we talked about them in a public forum has brought a lot of attention to the agency. We have these meetings and we have one person from the general public who comes to me. Thank you for coming, by the way. So we don't have enough, in my opinion. We talk about having transparency, and you would say, oh, I put on the website that we're being transparent, but are we really being transparent just by putting it on the website? Because we know people don't really go to the website. We know that the lawyers go to the website. Anybody who has, if they're very kind of homing in on us, they go to the website, but most people ignore our website. And we want to change it. We want our website to be a source of information for people of all income ranges and for all reasons, to say, look, we put it out there and it's actually being looked at by the general public.
Two things I want to kind of mention or point out. Analytics, right? You can add analytics to see. I didn't see that on there, so make sure you add that to see. Because it makes no sense to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a website and we're still not getting anybody to go there, so we need to track who goes there and how they go on there. And the second question is and this is kind of an educational question for myself, do we have any kind of data or any thought process or common sense approach on, are the lower income people going to be able to use the website to go in and do stuff? Do they have computers? Do they have wireless? I mean, it does us no good to have that on there if the people aren't using it. So if they don't have computers or wireless, maybe there's a station somewhere where they can, in the building where they can fill out their stuff.
I guess that kind of ties into a few other things that we've already kind of started doing. One of which is in our larger complexes, we're incorporating free Wi-Fi access points. So that'll allow more people. That doesn't cover everybody, but that'll allow more people access. One thing I'll say though, and for the majority of our residents, definitely not all of our residents, but for the vast majority of residents and people who of all income levels, and 8-year-olds have Facebook pages now, and I think having those kind of presence on Facebook and a presence on these applications that people use on their cell phones, those will probably give us more access to people who might not go online at a computer.
So you're saying the smartphone is where...
Yeah, I think that's what
everybody's got a smartphone nowadays.
And my son,
No, not everybody.
But my son's 4 and he can work an iPhone better than I can. So a lot of people have, and I think that'll broaden our range of people we can reach in that process.
And I think as you kind of take us down this path, that's got to be factored in, because building a website that's, you know, works for a laptop is different than, you know, it's got to be able to, I mean, we're going to go from those to these, you know, and so it's got to be able to work in this world, in the mobile world.
Absolutely, and that is key, that we have a website that's just as interactive and useful on a computer as it is on a tablet, as it is on a cell phone. And it has to be quickly and easily updated, and quickly and easily accessible. We have to make sure, and those are the things that we're very aware of, and want to make sure that we incorporate those.
Yeah.
So we had some examples of those, and we already have, this is our YouTube page where the board videos, other videos and things that we do, these presentations, for example, 2 presentations you'll get today will get posted here. It will have discussion, you know, the audio commentary will be added to those videos. So we'll have these kinds of things available. This is just kind of the direction. If you search us on Facebook, this is what comes up. We don't actually have a page, but we will in the future. And the beauty of all of these things really is they're very informative, but they cost us nothing. You know, it doesn't cost anything to have a Facebook page or a YouTube page. So we get to kind of benefit from these and not spend any money doing it.
So who's doing all the updating on all this stuff?
We actually contract that. We have 2 firms that deal with our technology as far as computer concerned. IT Savvy, which they handle a lot of our network capabilities, and then Robin Kraft, who's an individual who has consulted with me for a couple of years now. And we've already discussed, we'll have to go out to bid because it will be a larger, this new iteration of the website will be much more costly, probably $10,000 to $15,000, but so that'll go out to bid, but we want to make sure the best possible person or company is working on that.
Yeah, I just didn't want you doing all the updates.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Well, no. Well, you're talking about the initial build out of the website, but what about like if we're starting to go on Twitter and Facebook, like who is updating?
There's 2 sides to that. Initially, we'll do it internally. Alex, myself, maybe one other staff person will be involved in making sure those get updated with information as it comes out. There will probably come a point in time, and it's something we have budgeted for, where we will need what we will consider a communications analyst, somebody whose responsibility includes not just those pieces, but also public relations and dealing with community events. Exactly. Just somebody who's really in tune and is good with those kinds of applications, but also can kind of word it the right way, so I don't say anything goofy like families when I'm talking about individuals. Yes, ma'am.
In response to Brent's question about the lower income residents and whether or not they had computers and things like that, what would you offer for the current residents? They have property managers and things like that to address all of their issues. What type of information would be available for the residents?
Well, for our
at the website.
Well, it would range from, everything from the entire application process. We want to make sure that available on the website. Any new policies that the agency is putting out, we want to put those on the website. We want all of our meetings to be highlighted. Any kind of public activities, a lot of KIMS programs would be available on the website. As we go down the road of doing a newsletter.
Vacancies?
Yes, newsletter. New vacancies is one of the internal procedures we have to deal with is how to allow residents to transfer. If they find a unit they're eligible for that they might prefer to have, how can we allow them to transfer? And an easy way to do that is to put the available transfer list units on the website. To be quite honest, I don't have a full list, but there's pretty much want to make sure that everything that we do for our residents is accessible. And then we want to make sure that we link to partner organizations. So if there are healthcare needs, we want to make sure we have a working link to healthcare organizations or residents who are able to or are ready to start looking at home ownership. We want to have maybe a job page there where residents can find employment or at least begin to look. We'd like the website to really be a central source, not only for people looking for housing, but people already in housing to have more opportunities. Good. All right. We've already kind of gone through, we did the office presentation. Nothing substantial has changed really at all. We're still kind of sitting on the location at Jericho. We're doing, again, some of our pre-planning on that site to make sure that everything will work out there. So obviously, as we do any construction, just kind of touch on this again. We want it to be green. We want to incorporate any technologies that we've been dreaming about doing. Now's the time to put them in. And Carlos and Jimmy have been wonderful, as you'll see when we do the presentation on the new house. They've been amazing in keeping costs down. So We have to make sure we keep them so that we keep the cost down. But you know, they've done a wonderful job with that. As we've talked, the site is pretty much 45 minutes away from anything else in the city, which it's a little far, but we did do a study and found that about 80 to 90% of our residents get to us by car, whether it be their car or other forms of transportation, but they do get to us by car. The site's very large, and it still maintains a lot of potential, even with us occupying a portion of it as an office. There really doesn't prevent, or we don't get in the way because of where the building's located. We don't stand in the way of any potential redevelopment or other activities on that site. I mean, that's a small piece of the 14 acres that that site occupies. So we could do this and still be out of the way of anything going forward. Obviously, I think we kind of already did this here. So let's get to something a little bit more fun. The vehicles.
How many do we have total?
Right now, 13. And they are, on average, except about 8 years old. So we have an aging fleet. And one of the costs that comes up regularly are maintenance costs. We own the vehicles, we don't lease them, and we don't have, after obviously about 3 years, 36,000 run out of warranty repairs. So we are dealing with a large amount of maintenance on the vehicles, just kind of standard, so things that go bad after 8 years. It's not like the vehicles are beat up, we actually take pretty good care of them. It's just after 8 years of use, we use them every day, back and forth with large loads. It gets this way after a while. The other thing about vehicles that are old is they don't have the same fuel efficiency as the vehicles that are being produced now. So that cost is something else that we're dealing with a lot as far as refueling the vehicles. The other thing though, and it's the last kind of button there, is the vehicles do say a lot about who we are. And right now we have the vehicles that say Aurora housing on the side of them, which is fine. We're not saying we shouldn't have our logo on the side of the vehicles. But when you look at a lot of corporations now, they want to be seen as green. They want to be seen as working smarter, not harder. And a lot of times, when you look at the bigger, older vehicles, it gives the impression of this older construction, not so concerned about the environment image. By going with a lot of the smaller vehicles, you'll see the vehicles we're proposing are much smaller and much more fuel efficient. I think that's a positive as people look at the agencies. Okay, well, this housing authority isn't just continuing to purchase vehicles they may or may not need. They're not thinking the same ways. They're actually trying to do things in a better way. And on top of that, when we're talking about some of the savings, will be under warranty for 3 years at a time. We'd like to cycle the vehicles every 3 years to keep them under warranty. And also, we're talking about almost doubling in some cases fuel efficiency, which states a lot about how much money we're technically saving taxpayers. Everybody wants, they always say, oh, the housing authority just spent money. Oh yeah, but the money we're spending is actually coming back to the agency in the form of fuel savings, lower maintenance costs. And ultimately, with the newer fleet, we are putting dollars in the hands of companies that do pay taxes in the region. Now, we would like to do, as much as possible, local dealerships. That may not always be possible, but to the extent that it is, we certainly would want to do that. We've looked at some of the vehicles, and I know Chairman Champion did bring up to me a concern about the vehicles being domestic, being American-made.
Yeah, I would have that as a question too.
I will, and my response when he asked the question, and to kind of paraphrase, was, Toyotas, for example, one of the things we kind of threw out there was maybe the Toyota Tacomas, and I know the sedans, we have Ford Tauruses right now, which are very large vehicles, which we really don't need. I mean, we have, at most, there's usually 2 people in the car. Normally, it's about 1. So we looked at the Nissan Versas. One thing about those vehicles, especially nowadays, the Toyotas, for example, the entire vehicle is assembled in the United States. Their drive, the entire engine, transmission, the entire under the hood piece is assembled in the United States. And actually, in their plant that they assemble the vehicles, they brought in all of their suppliers that are on the same campus in Indiana. They also build them in Mississippi and in Georgia, I believe. And the Nissan Versa, I believe 60% of the parts of that vehicle are also domestically sourced. So it's always been a question, and I drive a foreign car, and you look at it, it says on like one of those plates it was assembled in whatever foreign country they assembled it in. But as I go to purchase it, I can get 4 parts or parts that were made in Michigan in my vehicle, or parts that were made in Georgia and Alabama in my vehicle. So foreign, to a certain degree, is not as overwhelming of a term anymore. Not to say that we couldn't source, but the one other thing we did look at was cost, and that became a real driving factor in the vehicle. So we chose those. We
Does that mean the board members get one?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Choice of colors?
Sure. Now, here's the thing, we can only afford 2 a year, so, you gotta share with the maintenance guys. I think we can get a refrigerator in the trunk. No,
Funny.
so the vehicles we were looking at,
Can I ask you one question before you go on? As a corporation, it's different than a government non-for-profit.
Mhm.
Is it better, and have you crunched the numbers yet, is it better to lease these things or is it better to buy them? Do you know?
we're doing that right now. Alex is in the midst of a very time-consuming project.
Okay.
Working with, we've actually we're looking at Ford dealership is bidding on that business, and they're putting together a proposal. Also, Enterprise Fleet Services, which they have a variety of vehicles and programs that they can use as well. They're also bidding on it.
I mean, I understand what the chairman said, but it seems to me if we're using taxpayer dollars, we've got to get what we want, okay? But we have to really look at the numbers too,
Absolutely.
because every car company has the ability to compete. If they can't compete, we still have to be responsible to the taxpayers. So whether that's Ford, Toyota, Chevy, whoever it is, and I think we, have to look at that. I would say if we can give the business to local dealers, that keeps it here in the community. But again, you still have to let them know that they're competing,
Right.
for the business. So I just think that's fair if you're doing it, both ways.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, we are looking at both the purchase option and the lease option to see what's going to work out best for us over the time frame. So we look at some of the vehicles and we kind of have some competing ideas. The Ford F-150, the Toyota Tacoma are pickup truck ideas. Now, they have their differences. Something, for example, the F-150 is the workhorse of pickup trucks, and by bar, hands down, that is the pickup for hauling, heavy loads. The Tacoma, of course, is a little cheaper, has a better fuel efficiency. So it just becomes, we have to work out, exactly what we need in a vehicle, and then compare that to the cost that we will be incurring to get a certain vehicle. When we talk about our sedans, like I said, we don't really need large sedans. We don't typically have 4 or 5 people in the vehicle, and even so, all of these are 4-door vehicles. The Nissan Versa actually has a starting price, brand new, $13,000. So it's an enormous savings over a base model Taurus. The Jeep Patriot, the reason we consider that is it provides flexibility. It can seat 5, 6 comfortably, but it also allows us to do some hauling that may not require a pickup truck, and so that we can, if we're doing office moves, exactly. So it's a little more flexible. The Ford Transit is probably the choice already for replacing our econo vans. The econo vans are kind of an older, outdated thought process as far as vehicles for us. They're very large cargo vans. They're very, very fuel inefficient. And they're pretty expensive, to be quite honest. You're talking about $23,000, $24,000, maybe $25,000. And we typically have to retrofit them. We put the ladders on top. We have different shelving options on the inside. The Ford Transit doubles the fuel efficiency off the bat. It's about $3,000 or $4,000 cheaper, and it has, even though it's configured very differently, it has a lot of the same internal capacity as our econo van. So we're looking at that as an option to replace the econo vans. And so it's smaller, it's sleeker. You'll see a lot of businesses now have them as a more efficient way to have a fleet of vehicles for maintenance staff. So professionalism. First of all, are there any other questions about the vehicles?
How are you looking at doing that, all at once as they come?
Staggered. Well, it depends. The lease option, for example, Enterprise, and the only reason I know is because I used to work for Enterprise Fleet Services a long time ago. They have an option. They can turn them all at one time. That's not, for a lease option, we probably would do it that way. The purchases, as you notice in the plan, are staggered over, I think we do 5 vehicles a year for 3 years, and then we start over. So that's how we're going to keep the 3-year, keep them under warranty, and trying to keep kind of a regularly revolving door of vehicles there. So professionalism. This is probably agency-wide, or not agency, industry-wide, the biggest problem housing authorities have. And it's not any one person, it's just the fact that our professionalism as agencies is just not up to par with the private market. And that's something that we need to change. It's a thought process that, for whatever reason, has lasted in this business and it has to come to an end simply because we're not able to serve the clients that we serve in the way we need to serve them. So for us, it is, in my opinion, the single most important factor in how people see us. You know, a lot of people have complaints about residents. I think a lot of those come back to the fact that us as a housing authority may need to make sure that we're treating people a certain way so that they in turn treat others in that same way. It has to start with us, in my opinion. And that comes down to basically stricter requirements for staff. And we're going to ask more of our staff. And I don't, you know, and when I say that, I don't think we're going to ask more in a way that's unreasonable. I think what we're asking for is simply to give the respect of a customer. A lot of times, you know, housing authority personnel, and it's not, I'm not, you know, singling any person out, but we've been in our job, we're comfortable in our jobs, and we get used to seeing the residents in a certain way, and that's not acceptable. You know, a lot of times, oh, well, the residents are only paying $100 a month in rent, blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, $900 a month on average comes in here per person. If that person's not here, the entire $900 leaves, not just the $100 that they're contributing. It's not our job to concern ourselves with how the money gets to us. It's not our job really to concern ourselves with the money at all. Our job is to concern ourselves with the customer. And so, and that's one of the things we need to push is that they're not residents, they're customers. Everybody who lives in public housing, they are our customer. And our jobs and our livelihoods depend on them just as much as anybody else who has a job. So, you know, you have all had or have various, you know, forms of employment, and your customers are the reasons that you have those forms of employment. And it's no different for us. We can't behave any differently. So, you know, we want to be responsive. We want to have a positive demeanor. Everybody has a bad day. That's understandable. But we want to, you know, treat people differently. We want to treat people better. And part of that allows us to reach out to other clientele. If I have access to more resources and I have more choices in where I rent, where am I going to go? Am I going to go where I'm treated badly, or am I going to go where I'm treated nicely? I'm going to, you know, regardless of the property, sometimes how I'm treated determines a lot about where I'm going to spend my money. If I go to a store that sells milk and they treat me really bad when I'm trying to buy milk, well, there's a million places to sell milk, just like there are a million places to rent housing from. We're not the only, you know, we're not the only game in town. People can rent other places. We want to make sure that they rent from us, and it's because we treat them a certain way. So we want to provide, you know, we don't want to just go out and give this mandate to staff. So we will provide training, and we will, you know, individually, both from, you know, from my desk to staff, and also from external sources. We'll bring in some sources to have these trainings and explain what it really means to work in a different kind of environment. Really, you know, when we talk about this plan as kind of an overall look at the agency, the goal really is to behave better, is to behave as if we're no different than any other, you know, private market corporation. And that's really what it comes down to. Yes, our motives and our goals or our mission is a little bit different, but at the end of the day, we have to really look at ourselves overall in a different way.
The Disney Aurora Housing Authority.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for.
We'll Mickey Mouse and
the experience.
But I mean, that's
Yeah, put them on the pictures.
I think it could be a little better than Disney.
I've never been, so I have to go and see. But, you know, ultimately the goals are.
I was just gonna say, if you go down this road, which I think is a good path to go down, toughest part about trying to do something like this is you have to be ready to hold everyone accountable to that standard. Because when bad behavior happens and you or your key team doesn't react to it, then the whole thing crumbles really fast. So you just got to be kind of, because it's more than just saying it, because then you're going to have 80–90% of people are going to fall in line and say, I like this, I like working in an environment like that, and then you're going to have the folks that fall back.
And one of the things we think about as we go down this road of professionalism, it's not just the staff. Well, I don't want to seem to make it sound like I have horrible staff who are running amok. I mean, Jimmy's outside, you know, in a wife beater and shorts. It's not what's happening.
Not no more.
But you know, it's both ends. You know, we want the staff to work a certain way, but we also want to provide an environment that staff feel a part of and that they want to work that way. So it's also kind of the responsibility is on us, on me as a director, to create a new environment for staff as well. We want to provide more flexibility. We like to have the thought that if you really need to do something in those days, that you can go do that because you're expected to do the work, not spend the time. And I like to tell people, and this is a secret I'm giving out, but I tell staff, and I don't concern myself with how you spend 8 hours. My goal is that you get the work done. If you can get it all done on Friday, I don't care what you do Monday through Thursday. We need the work done. Now, of course, there are caveats with that. Some people need to be in certain places, but we want to create an environment where the staff are respected and feel respected as well. It's not just, this planning is about the residents and the staff. And we want to make sure we create an environment where staff have access to technology, they have access to training, they have access to the information that's going to allow them to do their job, and so that we can say, you know, we have provided you everything that you need to be professional. Now I expect you to be professional. I can't expect somebody to be something that I'm not preparing them and giving them the resources to be. So we're working on both ends of the spectrum to make sure that we're doing that. Market. Now I'm sorry, were there any questions about our professionalism push? We have never done this, and most housing authorities have. We don't spend a lot of time talking about advertising because, again, we have this captive audience that we know we'll always have. So we've never engaged in a substantial marketing campaign. This will be new for the agency. But what we're talking about doing, and as we get to the expansion section of this chart, or presentation, you'll realize that, you know, there's a lot of growth that we're going to need, or not necessarily need, but we would like to reach out to and tap into. That's going to require that we reach out to people in a new way. And expecting them to come to us is not going to get us to that point. So we want strong marketing. It'll get us a more diverse pool of applicants. We're going to, as we talked with the website, we're going to use social media, internet marketing, as well as traditional means. We're talking about some billboards, and, you know, maybe we get, you know, some money together. We'll do a commercial, and everybody in the world is my pretty face on Channel 5. But you know, we want to try things we haven't done before. We really want to push some ideas out there and get ourselves in front of people that we haven't before. At the Housing Authority City of Pittsburgh, they did an advertising campaign where they targeted City of Pittsburgh Transit and Port Authority there. They put the billboards right next to all their bus stops have the very nice covered billboards at the advertising sections inside the bus terminal. They're behind the glass plates. It's something that we, you know, consider. It worked very well for them. They were professionally done. They had a nice little advertising tag on it. You look good from here. I think is what they put on their signs, and it showcased their properties. It gave the number, and it was a very good campaign. And it drove a lot of people as you're waiting for the bus. You can see that sign. You think about it, maybe not then, but you think about it later. Like, I remember the housing authorities got signs that they're taking new people in. And part of this overall marketing and advertising actually involves this kind of word of mouth advertising. You know, us making friends and being partners in the community with different chambers of commerce, with different community organizations, service providers, making sure that, you know, when residents come to them in certain situations, they say, look, why don't you go to the housing authority? They have a program for the need that you have. So educating and working with our partners in this area to educate them about what we do and what we can do to help people will also be key to the marketing plan. And now educational outreach. We don't, and most housing authorities don't. This isn't, we are not odd in this fact that we don't do internships. We don't reach out to students really of any kind. If you look at our staff as of today, on average, the age is about 51 years old, which means over the next 10 years, 10, 15 years, most of the staff here will turn over. That means that we need to have people ready to step in and fill some very, very, very large shoes at this agency. One of the ways we could do that is just, you know, let it happen and reach out to bring other people in just out of the general employment market, or reach out to other housing authorities. But what would be more useful to both us and to the residents, students in the city of Aurora is to develop an internship program for multiple reasons. For us, it allows people to come in who have a desire. They're already training and learning and getting educated in a social service field, but it educates them about what we do. It educates them about the programs that we have, about the reality of what goes on in the housing authority. Before I worked at one, I had no idea the depth of the departments, the level of the high level of work that we do at times. And, you know, until you're in that industry, you wouldn't know that. We don't spend a lot of time. People don't. And when you talk about, oh, I got a master's degree in finance, you don't think that I'll go work at the housing authority one day. But, and I don't have a master's degree, but we're looking at me like you. But when you think about that, you think, oh, I want to go work for Boeing, I want to go work for McDonald's, I want to go work for these corporations. But housing authorities pay just as well as most of those companies do, especially entry level. We actually pay more entry level than most of those industries do. On top of that, the heights that you can reach in this business are no less than any of those corporations, and you can serve the community, you can be a positive influence on your community by doing so. We've actually started that conversation with DePaul University, and we want to expand it obviously to Aurora University and some of the other regional universities. The idea being that we could really have a program that took in students from any university would really be the goal, but since we have local universities, a lot of housing authorities aren't in this situation, we have a local university that we can partner with, and that, we've already kind of, we started with DePaul, and DePaul's not the local university, but we can partner with these agencies that are here, with these universities that are here, and probably already have an interest, and have students interested in these programs that are close by, they don't have to travel, and they can do them during the school year. So, we want to do that with local universities, we want to expand that program. But we also considered two other avenues. One being a vocational program. Not everybody goes to college to become a doctor. Some people need training in how to be a maintenance tech or different things of that nature. We also need to make sure that we're providing those opportunities as well. The more people that we get involved, the better our profile is. The better, this is about rebranding. The better image the agency receives when the unions get involved and they say, well, look, we have some people who want to get trained in the center of their housing authorities internship program because they train people up, they train them the right way, and they're able to do the work when they're done. I think it's a benefit for us, as an image, it benefits us staffing wise, and it prepares us for the future. And then kind of a much longer term, I know you guys have the kind of timeline for these things, potentially reaching out to our East and West Aurora high schools and stating, that we can have an outreach program where students who maybe are AP students or vocational students who have an interest could come and get kind of a base level understanding, and maybe that translates into them being in our internship program for 4 years during college, which then translates into them receiving a job after college. And even better than that, though, the train is coming.
Is it coming or going?
But even after that point, if you go through that program, you're ready to work at any housing authority in the country. And if we could be the start of that kind of program, that's something that will raise our profile nationwide. When people say, look, this student went to the Aurora Housing Authority's internship program, they're ready to work from day one. We don't have to train them. They already know what they're doing. We would become a source of hiring for not just our housing authority, but just about every housing authority nationwide, because that's one thing this industry lacks is fresh talent, new ideas. There aren't a lot of young people at 22, 23 talking about they want to go work for a housing authority. You luck into it, and then you stay here for 40 years, but not a lot of people. When I came out of school, I went to work at Enterprise, and the housing authority was an accident. I only came because I needed a job, and they were offering one. I had no idea what went on inside. So it's something that we can work on.
What major, you said internships, you talked about, but what majors are you looking for in terms of?
Well, see, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, it could be a vast array of majors. For example, I had a finance degree. Every housing authority has money that they need to deal with. You can have your resident, your social work degrees, because we have a casework component. There's management, there's business management in this. There's from the executive director's chair, from our senior staff, that's really a management team. There's legal, for example. There's definitely a legal aspect to what we do. So there's really no shortage of opportunity there. We could bring in pretty much any major that was prepared to work in a business environment into our operation. So that's part one, the rebranding. Any questions? And I'm going to interrupt too, because we're going to be here for a while. So the food is there. I want to take a break and grab some food too before we move forward if you want anything. The second piece is the residents' experience. And it's a big piece because we want to really talk about how the residents go through this process, what they're dealing with when they're inside of kind of our arms. What are we doing with the residents? What is their experience like? So we talk about different areas. The first being the application process. Right now it's a paperwork intensive process. It's easily 2 or 3 visits. You're bringing down different pieces of information. You're telling us to go back and more information. We talk about putting it on the website and making this, trying to streamline that process. So like I said, we want it to be as electronic as possible. We want to decrease the time it takes to do it. We want to reduce the paperwork burden for both ends, for the residents as well as the staff. We have on a file on every resident probably as thick as one of these boxes of food here. It's really obscene how much paperwork we have on people. when it could all be managed electronically. We've talked to a few vendors about the process of going paperless, and it's something that we're probably going to look at doing this fiscal year. The admissions process is a similar situation where there's a lot of lag time where we're, between when you applied and been told you're eligible to when you can move in. Now, some of that we can't help. Some of it's just due to the fact we don't have enough units and the waiting list is very long. But to the extent that we can streamline it, I believe that we can, especially where we start involving, electronic meetings. We want to go to, and our software vendor, Emphasis, has an entire secondary application set up to go entirely paperless for your applications and admissions. And that's something we're talking about implementation. They're kind of getting back to us about how long it would take and what we would need to do. But the idea being that even to the point of electronic signatures, which is something that everybody here probably does when they fill out their taxes. You don't actually sign paper, you don't even fill out the papers anymore. You just sign them electronically and send them. We would like to have that same situation. By controlling the process electronically, it also allows us to manage the information better. We'll know what we need before we need it. We'll also be able to tell residents where they stand on the waiting list before they ask. So when that call comes in, or even if they might not have to call, when they come in, they can go on the website, put in their username ID, you're on the waiting list, you're number 17 there, for your unit size. Just anything we can do to make this process easier for everybody involved. One of the things we don't do, and I've heard of this, especially some of the residents from Maple Terrace are very vocal about the fact that we don't provide a lot of information about different things that are available to them and different things that we offer and that the community offers. So one of the things we want to do as part of the admission process is create just this care packet. I've moved into apartments and they give you like a roll of toilet paper and a dishwasher soap thing. I don't know what the dishwasher soap thing's for, but it's just one. It doesn't help me. But we want to create something nice like that also has information for the residents. These are the programs we offer. These are the people you can talk to. These are the programs that are offered in this neighborhood. Here's the grocery store that's closest. Here's the pharmacist, the doctor's offices that are closest. Just different things to get people more involved in their community so they'll know what's available. And we also want to have kind of a follow-up meeting. Maybe a month after you moved in, him or somebody else on the staff just goes out and double checks. Do you have everything you need? Are you have any questions about your unit, about living in public housing? Have you thought about our Ross program? Have you gotten involved in any other area programs? Is there anything you'd like to know about your neighborhood? Things that we can do to just kind of ease that transition into public housing. This is the fun part, and this is the part I'm probably most proud of in all of this. The unit tier idea is one that, as far as I'm aware, is unique in the housing business. I don't know anybody else who's really doing this kind of potential housing. Right now, what we've done is we have a standard public housing profile. All of our housing units, even though they're in different units, maybe have different floor plans, they all look the same. And it's not, we're not talking about they all look the same as their luxury either. Everybody knows we do, white tile, white walls, old, stoves, and refrigerators. And it's not to blame on anybody, that's just what the industry does. It's not just us. As we, everybody always talks about the fact that public housing is outdated, and it needs a lot of money work, and the money's just not there. It's very simply, HUD isn't handing out the capital dollars to do this kind of work. I think the last number I heard was somewhere in the tens of billions of dollars of capital improvements that are needed nationwide. HUD will not ever have that kind of money to give to us. So we need to have some other way, some other thought on how to upgrade and improve our units. We did this with the house on Brighton Circle. The cost to overhaul a unit is not huge, especially once you see what we've done with the new unit. The cost isn't by any means substantial, and it doesn't require any acquisitions. It doesn't require any redevelopment. This is building and making us better from the inside out. And sometimes, I always talk about, I want to lose some weight and get a six-pack again, but it's not going to happen by me taking medicine or changing the way I dress. The only way I'm going to get fit is if I get my butt in the gym and work out. The same thing for the housing authority. We're not going to get better waiting on somebody else on the outside to make us better. The only way for us to get better is from the inside out. These unit tiers also serve as an incentive program. We want to talk about people going through this program, except we give them no reason to earn more money. The person in public housing that makes $600 lives in the exact same unit as the person in public housing pays no dollars. To me, that's a disincentive for me to earn more income, because if I'm the person who's making $0 and say, well, why would I go get a job and go to work and make all that money and pay you all that money and I'm staying in the exact same unit. There's no motivation there. So the unit tiers is designed to give people motivation. It's designed to say, okay, if you make X amount of dollars, we'll give you a unit that has more amenities, has maybe it's a more desirable unit, it's a larger floor plan. And if you go even further than that, we've got scattered sites. These are private, single family homes or duplexes. So we have some different opportunities where I think we can motivate people to do better. So obviously our standard unit tier won't change. The public housing we have would qualify as tier 1. It's going to be standard units. We are doing certain modernization activities anyway, where as we're talking about the energy efficiency, we're going to do that because it's better for the agency, regardless of what other impacts it may have. This is the standard unit in every building that we have in every building, and so there's no shortage of this. And while it sounds bad, it really isn't a derogatory thing. It's just going to be aimed at those families that aren't earning the higher levels of income. In order for this plan to work, it has to the tiers have to exist, and they have to have cutoff points, and there'll be some lines drawn that may not, on the face of those lines, appear to be nice, so to speak, but I think they're necessary in order for the plan to move forward. But like I said, we will do standard upgrades that we need to do to make the units livable. We can't, even on the lowest tier, we can't have some of the situations that we have, so we want to upgrade and modernize those units. Tier 2, and as you guys saw, there were pictures of these in the package that you received. The tier 2 units will get upgraded appliances. We'll limit the upgrades. We're not going to go all in with the upgrades. We'll do certain upgrades that provide a nicer living experience. These will be more of our apartment complexes, our Maple Terrace, our Centennial House, Eastwood, Southwind. There are units in these buildings that are desirable. They have better views, they have maybe larger floor plans. So we can go in and provide upgraded appliances at a pretty low cost point. We can do some improvements to maybe some paint colors or some things that are in between tier 2 and what we would like to get to tier 3. We'll have to figure out where the lines of income are drawn. There will come a point where it's okay, people between X and Y, but this will be for that second level of income in our portfolio. And tier 3 is our brightened circles. We will primarily put this in our scattered sites. There will be some, if you want to have, we'll need to have some units of this nature that are handicap accessible, things of that nature. So we will have some in other locations. These are primarily going to be our scattered sites. And as you'll see, we've gone really all in with paint colors, baseboards, appliances, everything from top to bottom gets a look at to really improve these units. And these are for the real top 10% of our families. If we have a family paying $600 or $700 a month in income, they should qualify, in my opinion, for these higher tiers. These units are in areas, ideally we'll put them in areas, we'll talk about that later with the opportunity areas, better communities, we try to put them in a place where they have a little more room. The neighborhoods are not better neighborhoods, more manicured. They're trying to get away from the condensed poverty in certain areas that we have. And then tier 4 is something we don't have, and it'll be a while before we have, but we're looking at competing and creating this competition to attract those families that are in that 60 to 95% of the area median income. We're not serving any of those families right now. We're not, when you're talking about 70 to 95, we don't reach those families. They've got enough money that they can go elsewhere, but so a lot of them are teetering. If something were to go wrong, can they stay in these higher end apartments? And also, there sometimes exists a gap where you make enough money to afford a higher end unit or a nicer unit, but it's a lot more of your income than would be, but you don't want to go all the way down to the other end of the spectrum either. So we want to provide this in between where families who are at those higher income levels that are still affordable have what we would consider affordable luxury to reach out to that is comfortably within their means. One of the things that gives us an advantage, so to speak, over some of the other landlords is that we have the calculations that work to our advantage in the situation. If you're an individual who works and you can pay $1,000 a month in rent, but you don't really need to. You'd be better off paying $800. Our sliding scale, that 30% that we're able to charge, puts you in a much better situation financially. You're not overextending yourself, and we will fluctuate with your income as well. So those are things where we like to address in the tier 4. We want to have these units that are we'll probably raid IKEA for everything they got, but we want to really go in and upgrade units and make them nicer.
Question.
Yes.
Are there any of the tier 4s in the general area?
Not right now. Tier 4 currently does not exist. It's
Well,
something
not
we-
for anybody.
No, well, I don't know about, in a broad, are you talking about other housing authorities?
Mhm.
No. The closest you'll get is a mixed finance project. If you look at your bigger city, Chicago probably has in Cook County. Their mixed finance units are as close as you'll get to that because they're not managed or maintained by the housing authority and they're intended to reach a different clientele. I did get Cook County for some reason sends us their newsletter. I think they're showing off when we have a newsletter. I was looking to have in their newsletter, they actually put a picture, I meant to bring it. I'll bring it to the meeting on Wednesday. They have their upgraded units in their newsletter. I was very pleased to say that our upgraded unit is far nicer than theirs. And I have some friends that work, but I want to send them a picture of ours when we're done with it so they can see what we're doing. But you know, so what a lot of housing authorities are considering their luxury doesn't even match what we're trying to do just on a more standard basis. Okay.
I guess I have a question just in terms of the different tiers. I know that income's one way to do it. Is there any other factors without making it either like trying to be silly to try to get a scorecard together or to manage it, but I mean, are there other factors that can be tracked and like measured where basically residents would earn points for, you know, if you're, you know.
In the Ross program.
I'm in the Ross program,
Exactly.
I volunteer at a nonprofit, my kids, you know, graduated high school, whatever the different things are that get you kind of a check mark that you're, you know, you're in the positive column. Because if it's just about the income, then there might be some high quality residents that are left.
And that's something certainly, like I said, we can definitely put together, I like that, put together like a scorecard that can, like you said, it'll allow, you know, if it's out of a score of 100, you know, if you're 90 to 100, you're tier 3, 70 to 90 is tier 2. So there's certainly, we certainly can incorporate something like that into it. And I think that is probably a lot more fair than just saying income. Like I said, there are definitely families that, and I've met some residents who, you talk to, have excellent children. They do work, but maybe they're just not in a position where they can get to that next level quickly.
Right.
So they, you know, there's certainly room for us to do that. Yes.
Have you thought through that whole program all the way, or is it just that's like the idea and the direction?
That's the idea. No, there's still. I mean, a lot of this. These are all.
If you get into that unit and then something happens,
there are a lot of detailed issues that we'll have to deal with. We got an idea from Brenshaw actually. They discussed, making it a requirement that if you lose your employment, doesn't necessarily mean you lose a unit. If you go back into the Ross program and get back into job training, we can do some things to assist you in staying in those higher tier units. So those are things we'll need to work out as we implement the policies. Another thing too.
can you just take, as it stands now, you know, if somebody lost their job or got in trouble in some way that would kind of disqualify them from the higher tier, could you just ask them to move and transfer their apartment?
Yeah. As it is right now, we're not even allowed. A lot of this requires, we're going to go to HUD with a lot of proposals. This is a substantial change from the housing policy. So we'll need to put some of these policies out there. HUD will have to approve them, and they'll go out for public comment. But there are a lot of these, and these are all policy issues, so there will come a point later when we get to the implementation of these, when we've actually done all the details. It'll have to come back to the board. All of this pretty much will have to come back to the board for actual approval. What we're getting at with the strategic plan is, the board adopting this idea of things to come. And then as we do the details, it'll all come back, for approval.
You're trying to be innovative and you're trying to introduce new things that separate us from everybody else that's out there. Is that kind of...
To be quite honest, and I'm not bragging by any means, I don't do this for, if anybody knows I don't like being in front of talking, even though I do it here, it's very uncomfortable for me, but ultimately at the end of the day, if we adopt this plan and complete it in 5 years, we will be a model agency for the industry, period. We will be doing things that no other housing authority is doing, number one. Number two, we'll be doing things combined. The combination of everything in this plan, you'll find housing authorities that do bits and pieces of it. How one housing authority does this thing, one housing authority there isn't a housing authority in the country that does all of these things and has them all on a plan and really puts them together. We will be very, very unique in our position if we do this.
I think we have like 4 or 5 boxes over there. Is everybody eating that wants one?
Yeah,
And then I was gonna ask if maybe we
food.
should offer them to
Yeah,
our guests.
that's what we ordered for everybody. I don't know why they didn't get other.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you guys.
Okay, so the next part, rent payment maintenance request. One of the things that came up, and I kind of wish Ms. Hill had stayed, there was an issue brought up to our attention about, not being able sometimes to get through or to get maintenance requests. We wanted, and this isn't a response to that, this is part of the overall plan, but we want to make sure that we have as many options for people to get this information into the housing authority and into Jimmy or into accounts receivable as possible. The lockbox is our first step at providing options for paying rent. From that, we're going to move to, we want to have online payments accepted. We want to be able to take drafts from other people's, from the accounts, so people just set up an automatic payment every month. Right now, the only thing we can do is one payment form, and it's problematic because one is never going to work for the number of people we serve. So we're talking about providing all the different options that are available. If we set up, payment kiosks, maybe we can partner with some city agencies and allow them to take payments on our behalf as well. There's all the different ways that money can come to the agency. There's no reason why we shouldn't take it that way. Same thing goes with our maintenance requests. Now residents have to call in, or they have to catch their property manager. We want to change it so they can go on our website. They don't need to wait on us to put a maintenance request in. They can call an automated 1-800 number or a call center. They can put them in on the website. If you look at Amy's website samples that we put in the plan, there's a section there. It's like a resident portal. You log in, and if you have something broken, you just type in a request. And if it's an emergency, somebody will call you and come out. If it can, and it'll tell you, we're expecting to come out to address that tomorrow at this time. And the system, there are a lot of computer programs out there that can do the scheduling for us. We just need to kind of monitor and oversee it. So all of this is part of our upgraded website. We want to incorporate all of the ways that people can reach us for these 2 items as much as possible. We talk about being an agency that creates opportunity, and that's always been kind of the underlying tone of this board and of this agency, that we want to provide these opportunities. Our job is to provide opportunities. And so we want to help people to move through, and in order to do that, we really need to utilize programs that are already in existence that allow us to do that. The Ross program, the FSS programs, both exist and allow us to be involved in creating
I just imagined you trying to get out of the train's way.
Sorry.
Trying to get out of the train's way.
So we want to create partnerships and as many organizations as we can. We spoke earlier about working with the unions for vocational, the universities. Anybody who has programs that our residents could be involved in, we want to be partners with them. There's no reason why, because a lot of times we say, oh, we're housing, we don't do that, or we don't have resources. There are a lot of agencies that have plenty of resources and they're just looking for people to help. We need to provide, we have people that need help, we need to point our people in the right direction. So any kind of resource that exists, we want to utilize those. And also, as we look at our resident base, there are a lot of very skilled people in our resident base who have skills, who have fallen on hard times for whatever reason. And to the extent that we can help them potentially start their own businesses, that, and I always wanted to be an investment guy, but it could create sort of a venture capital kind of firm for us, in the fact that as we help people to create businesses, we can also potentially be part owners of those businesses, and that creates more revenue for us to do more assisting with business creation. And of course, any business creation creates more jobs, and it's more work that our residents can be pointed towards. Maybe the mandate is, if the housing authority helps you start a business, you agree to take on 1 or 2 interns. We'll work with you to get quality people in, and we just create a system that kind of feeds itself, so that we were creating jobs, and we're creating jobs for our residents who they can go on to create more jobs, and just this kind of cycle of job creation.
Are there more housing authorities that do that? Or are we going to be the front runner?
I want to say we're not. I don't think we'll be the only one. I know for a fact that if we say that we're going at it from a venture capitalism, we're helping to start businesses. We'll probably be, if not the only, one of the very few that do it. One of the more progressive agencies here, Chicago is, but they've got a lot of problems of their own. They've got a lot going on in Chicago of other stuff to deal with. Some of the agencies out west are a little more progressive. I think Portland's Housing Authority does a lot, San Diego does a lot, but this is something, it's just not something, we're talking about things that housing authorities don't spend their time doing. The beauty of this agency is we're not so large that it would be too complex for us to do. We're not so small that it would be too much of a burden for us to do. And I think in being that, Aurora is not a small town, so there's plenty of people in the city with expertise. So we just need to reach out to those people. And maybe we do create contracts, we do create situations where people are benefiting, but it doesn't bother me to let somebody benefit from helping us to help other people. That's what we do. We're a government agency, we're supposed to help other people. So we won't, I'm sorry, I got a little off track, but we probably won't be the single housing authority doing it, but we'll be one of the few, if any, that are. So the homeownership assistance, we talked about earlier in the board meeting about homeownership vouchers, and that's kind of the first step here. The city of Aurora, and Rick can be a little more clear about, there is a stated foreclosure concern. There is a need for housing and for more homeownership, more stable homeownership. And so we want to utilize our resources to help families to become homeowners and to remain homeowners. And that's two different things. Becoming a homeowner, even though, don't get me wrong, I just bought a house, it wasn't that hard. Staying a homeowner for 30 years is going to be a lot harder than just getting a house. And we want to make sure that we're also helping people to stay in their home. So we need to create a program by which we are offering, to the extent that we can, and this is a funding issue more so than anything, foreclosure and I don't know what to call it, just assistance with people remaining in their homes. So when families do fall on hard times and there's at risk of foreclosure, they know they can come to the housing authority, and we have a funded program that we can say, okay, we can help you for 6 months, and while we're helping you for 6 months, we want to put you in this program, this educational program, this job training program, with the hopes that at the end of 6 to 12 months, you can be back on your feet and able to stay in your home as opposed to going through the foreclosure process.
Some families that got flooded out last week are going to be in potential harm of losing their homes.
And it's just, there's a need there that housing authorities don't really address. And sometimes there are agencies within communities that do address it. And I honestly can't say whether there are or not those organizations in the city. But I always feel that the housing authority is uniquely positioned to help people in their housing needs, period. That's really, at the end of the day, we are very, very uniquely positioned to do that. Okay, this is touchy. And I admit this is touchy, and we do it, it'll be controversial. And the reason why, this is tracking in its purest form. We can call it whatever we want. My initial, when I was writing up the strategic plan, I had to come up with a better way of writing it to even present it. I initially called it resident tracking and modeling, because that's really what it is. We're being honest, this is tracking people. This is studying you from the moment you come in and using statistical analysis to determine, based on your behaviors, based upon different traits that you exhibit, based upon the income, the kind of jobs that you have, whether you're involved in our Ross program or not, using that information to help us determine how to tailor our resources to you. For example, some families will come in and they're always going to be here. And there's nothing we can do about that. That's not always wrong. Some families need us for that for the rest of their lives. But some families will come here and they will rely on us forever. But the problem is we don't figure that out soon enough. And we spend a lot of resources toward families that at the end of the day are just going to continue to take the resources and not benefit from them. So the goal of statistical modeling is to utilize the information that we glean, and we have, like I said, literally these boxes are about the size of a tenant file. We have got a boatload of information that gets updated every time you get a job, every time you lose a job, if you're in Section 8 you move, and the reasons why all those things happen. We keep all that information. By utilizing all that information, we're able to statistically kind of analyze and to figure out what we probably will do next. It's not, the funny thing, it sounds bad, and if we're doing it, everybody's, oh, you're tracking people, it's bad. But at the end of the day, we all have car insurance, and your insurance company does the exact same thing to you. Your insurance company looks at your risk factors, and they determine your rate based upon the likelihood that you'll do certain things. If I don't get in an accident for 10 years, they'll lower my rate. If I get in 3 this week, I'm going to be hard to insure next week. Other companies, corporations do this all the time, and they use it to forecast and utilize their resources. For us, it's so that we are not expending resources on people who don't want to better themselves. And that's not to say we won't spend resources at all. We're not going to cut anybody off. But to the extent that we have programs and we have funding, we want to tailor it to people that are going to use it for the right purpose.
Exactly.
Follow-up. This is a big problem. We have a lot of families that they do move through the system. Like I said, we had one family that moved out to the private market. Now, we don't know why. They may have just gotten fed up with us, or may have gotten enough money to move out for 6 months and not for a lifetime. And then they end up back in our doors, back under our wings. We need to make sure that as people are going through it, if we set up these programs and we implement them, and we're helping people move through the system, one of the key things keeping people from coming back is to make sure that we're working through with them for their first 6 months or first year on their own. To make sure that you understand building a budget, paying your bills on time, setting up bank accounts, all different things that, everybody, you've been in public housing for 10 years, you might not have needed to do those things, but you will need to do them now that you're out on your own. So we want to set up these programs through our self-sufficiency programs that provide this aftercare situation for families beyond the time that they're actually residents.
Sorry, I walked out on you.
No, it's fine.
The two questions on the tracking.
Mm-hmm.
One is it legal? And two, is there a way to do it where it would be kind of neutral to the residents as opposed to being a negative? I'm not, they already have a file, everyone's got a file with you guys already, so there's certain information that's already shared. I'm just trying to,
Well, the legality of it is, to be quite honest, something we're going to deal with. Now, like I said, insurance companies do it. I think it comes down to how we present the privacy of the information. We're not sharing the information, so to speak. If we do, we'll probably need a contractor who understands that kind of work. They'll be required to obviously maintain confidentiality. To be quite honest, we share a lot of this information. HUD requires a lot of it. Most state agencies require a lot of it from us anyway. We're not the only people with this information. Pretty much everybody here, as a resident qualifies for welfare, food stamps. They have largely the same amount of information. So I don't know, I think how we are using the information may need to be touched, we have to make sure we're careful about that and make sure we're not violating privacy laws, but I don't know that we're really crossing the line of legality, but we definitely would check on that.
I think like on all the financial stuff that I do, and I'll have to double check this, basically says this information is kept private, it's not shared with any individuals or any other companies, but the company that you're doing business with, you're giving them permission to utilize this information for their statistical whatever. So like on the application, when you sign it, pretty much you give permission.
And that's the thing, there's probably needs to be, when we do the application, the admission process on the leases, it probably needs to mention that, this is something that we need to do. And probably what we need to do, to be clear about it, is have an initial line next to that information. So that, we're clear that we explain that to people, they sign it, so that they had questions before they could ask those questions. I think that will probably address the legality. You have a second question?
I think there were two kind of lumped together. It was legal, and is it? Oh, how do you make it not totally offensive? But I think if you kind of treat it like it's the documents are already there, and they're already providing the information. So
the thing is, if we didn't tell anybody we were doing it, they never got it. It's not the reason we put it. We do, again, transparency is a big deal. We do want people to be aware of what we're doing. So I don't know. I hope that
we all give that information when we deal, whatever we're dealing with.
Yes.
What's the goal of the information? What are we trying to use it for?
Just to make sure that we're utilizing our resources to the best of our ability. If we realize that somebody has educational goals, then not only are we pointing them in the right direction for their educational goals, but as we have resources for certain programs, we're really targeting those programs for those individuals. The goal really is to help us to target our resources so that we're getting more bang for our buck for the dollars that we spend. All right, next section. We're getting through this. I promise we'll get to the house. If not, we'll cut off the last section because it's not that fun. Expansion and growth. First things first, we didn't make these numbers up. They're around it, they're approximated, but this is from the consolidated plan of the city. The stated need in that plan, I believe, was like 9,199 units of affordable housing in the city. We're serving about 15% of that population, and we're serving that 20% and below the area median income. Obviously, as you can see, it goes all the way up to 95% as a stated need. Area median income, by the way, is $60,000. So we're talking about families below $60,000 in various levels. The need analysis notes that if families aren't provided resources, overcrowding and homelessness could become a problem for those families. And again, and I'll kind of reiterate this, we are uniquely positioned as a housing authority with our resources and our expertise to really address this problem. You know, we spend a lot of time sometimes talking about how to address market rate needs and how to redevelop fancy developments on different sites, but at the end of the day, this is a need that we're really not fully addressing as it stands. So here's one of the things we did. We looked at our opportunity here. There are certain parts of the city that are better for housing than others. We've obviously had this discussion more than once in this room. But we don't want to concentrate families in one area. We want to find, put families in areas where there are better school districts. We want to put them in less dense situations where there are more resources, closer to grocery stores, closer to the schools, the hospitals, the doctor's offices. So we're looking at some of the opportunity areas. In the plans you received, we showed an actual a mapping that highlighted, and this is a governmental map, we didn't make those maps up, and it kind of highlights where the dense poverty is, where the better performing schools, where the higher income areas of the city are.
How is Batavia gonna let you?
Well,
When I read those, I'm going, no.
well,
We have housing in the Batavia School District.
well, exactly, and that's what we're looking at.
Over by the outlet
We're-
malls.
we were-
Over by where?
The outlet malls.
Actually, that's where I
No,
live.
no, no, I know that, but I mean, how are they not gonna scream and holler and stomp their feet?
Well, that's the beauty of all of this. We have to operate in this plan in the city of Aurora, but those areas that get closer, we were talking about just getting closer to the edges of the city.
Right.
We won't cross the borders, and of course they're going to be there. We'll have the same problems we have when we try to build any place. But at the same time, purchasing one house here, two houses there, and again, I'm not saying that it's an argument that we'll have that argument. And that's an argument where, it's a fair housing issue. We can purchase wherever we're allowed to purchase, and we're not going to do it to be offensive. Obviously.
Oh, I didn't.
They can scream and holler all they want. They have to take the student, because the student lives in their district. So they can do all the screaming and hollering that.
And when we do that, we
Yeah,
won't
the
put it on
district has
YouTube that
responsibility.
way. It'll just happen.
I don't think it'd be that much of a
It just
problem.
makes me feel so good that maybe some other school districts will be able to help out with the education of the kids rather than just east and west.
And we want to do, not, we don't, a lot of times we talk about, and I've heard conversations about, east, west, but to realize that there are so many other, areas, and they all fall within the city, and we're not reaching out to all the areas in the
There's
city.
there's 5 school districts that separate Aurora, is that not
Yeah,
correct?
That is correct.
So, we talk about opportunity areas, and we want to make sure that we're really getting out to that. So let's talk about the growth. Where are we going to find this growth? Like I said, the city's plan stated a need of 9,000 units of housing. So that's growth of, yes.
Can I ask, how are you guys planning on providing that, all through us?
No. We had this, we just.
Yeah, it's really, it's more of a needs assessment. So you look, for example, and this is even since that time, I think the numbers have actually, since the consolidated plan, the numbers have actually increased. You see, a little bit over 50% of renters in the city right now are paying more than 30% of their income. And so that's kind of what they're looking at on housing. So that's kind of the measuring stick there. So that's across income levels. Obviously, you care a little bit less about the very high income levels that have the ability to pay more than that if they want to, and still have enough left to meet their other goals. But what that is really just more of an identification of what the issue is. It wasn't necessarily, we didn't state as part of our plan that we were going to go out and create 9,000 units to meet that need, but just identifying the scale and scope of it, and then trying to figure out better ways to leverage.
Don't get me wrong, part of that is selling the idea here as well.
Right.
And we're running out of time, we're going to lose a few people, so we do want to get to the housing, so you can see that. But this we know that 500%. If we look at, and this is obviously we're not going to do this, but hypothetically, if we met that need ourselves, that would generate nearly $55 million a year for this agency.
Wow.
We're talking about scale. There's plenty of opportunity. The goal is that there's opportunity. That's the point we're trying to make. So there's no shortage of opportunity to generate enough funds. Really, at $55 million, we really don't need HUD. That level of revenue at an average income between $400 to $600 a month, which is really way below market rate. We would be a self-sustaining industry agency. We would not need HUD at all. There are little fluctuations we could kind of ignore. Would be nice.
You are an ambitious young man, aren't
Right.
I got one chance, I guess, you know.
you? Yes.
These are some of the ways, I'm not going to go through these in too much depth. These are HUD programs that allow us to leverage different programs. So replacement housing money we actually will get. That's a given because we took down the units at Jericho. I'm not sure how much that's going to be. They're always changing the formula, but we will get a substantial lump sum of money. It's identified for acquisition. That's all it's for, and we'll have to use it for that purpose. The other two...
So we actually got money to tear that down that we get to use to purchase.
We will get a lump sum of money to acquire housing. It's not nearly enough to acquire the number of units we take down, but we will get some money to put that back.
Welcome to the U.S. Go.
The other two programs, they're leveraging programs. They allow us to take some money that we have, for example, the capital fund programs, and leverage that with the loan to do more at one time. Because obviously, $1 million a year seems like a lot, but it's not enough to do substantial improvements. But if we took that over 5 or 10 years or even 20, then all of a sudden you've got a large sum of money you can really impact your programs with. And the performance contract, we're already doing a lot of utility costs and green improvements, so this might not be useful because the purpose of the performance contract is to bring down our utilities costs and then get a lump sum of funding that we'll use with the decrease of savings to do more improvements.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to say, with all that money we've been getting from the gas company and the electric company, that probably qualifies in there with the...
Well, certainly. I mean, it's just, it becomes, some of those companies, they want very large deals, and we might not qualify because of the size. This is really this is the dream part of the presentation. This is not very likely, but we do have, there's a 14-acre site there, and there's a lot of interest in various uses for the site, and a lot of organizations that could be involved. We've already kind of looked at it and said this is probably not a good site for housing. We're still dealing with that, and we're dealing with the ULI and some other organizations to see if that's going to be right. But if it's not going to be appropriate for housing, then it by default should mean that it's appropriate for non-housing purposes: sports, office, residence centers, community centers. And with, we have 14 acres on our site, probably, 5 or 6 on the Fox Valley Park District site, and then there's another 13 or 14 immediately adjacent to our site. That's plenty of room to do a very complex, very large-scale development that incorporated a lot of, not retail, but commercial office space, residence space, and sports space for different organizations. Now, there are a few varying proposals out there that we're looking at right now that may render all of this pointless, but we will, this is just something we kind of threw out there as a possibility, a very, very big, huge possibility, maybe 5 to 10 years down the road.
What's that last comment mean? Something that might render this?
Well, just because we're in the process of trying to figure out, we're doing a public process that the board wants us to do with determining the best use. If we agree for some reason that the best use is determined to be something else, then this may not fit into that. I'm actually going to break here. The operation, not to ignore it, it is very important stuff, but we want to have a couple people leave, and I want you guys to have the opportunity to see all the wonderful work that we have been doing.